Welcome back to World Insight. Let's continue with our reports. The political situation in Zimbabwe has held world attention for many weeks now. Amid domestic and international controversy, President Robert Mugabe insisted on carrying out the runoff vote on June 27th. His victory was widely denounced by some Western leaders with threats of sanctions, while the African Union has urged the creation of a power-sharing government. The big question now is what's the best solution to help heal the country's deep political wounds.
I, Robert Gabriel Mugabe, do swear that I will well and truly serve Zimbabwe in the office of President. So help me God.
For the sixth time, Robert Mugabe took the oath of office. But for the first time, he had trouble getting there. In the first round of elections on March 29th, opposition leader Morgan Tsvangirai won nearly 48% of the vote and Mugabe about 42%. Moreover, Mugabe's party lost control of the lower house of parliament. But Tsvangirai's lead wasn't enough for an outright victory. Violence broke out between supporters for the ruling party and the opposition.
The situation seems to be evolving, but I am still concerned that if election is held under these circumstances, there will be a serious questions and controversies about the legitimacy of the elections.
The Western countries went further by labeling the election a political crisis.
And I would hope that the African Union with the United Nations will make it absolutely clear to Mr. Mugabe that there's got to be change, a new government's got to be brought in.
But neither opposition nor condemnation stopped Mugabe from winning the runoff by a landslide. The runoff was actually a one-man race. Tsvangirai announced his withdrawal several days before the election, but the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission said it was too late.
It's not an election.
At this week's African Union summit, the 84-year-old statesman showed up as the newly elected president of Zimbabwe. His spokesman snapped back at the international critics.
They can go and hang. They can go and hang 1,000 times. They have no basis, they have no claim on Zimbabwean politics at all. And that's exactly the issue.
A Chinese analyst says that although the election is over, the complicated international environment will exacerbate Zimbabwe's domestic problems.
Although the president has been elected, the political rifts are widening. The existing problems have deep social and historical roots. Zimbabwe has been struggling with the political division and economic downturn for more than a decade.
All the signs are that Mugabe, a liberation war leader still respected in Africa, is in trouble. The unprecedented challenge in the elections can be traced to the country's economic hardships. Zimbabwe was once known as Africa's breadbasket for its fertile lands and abundant natural resources. But since the 1990s, the economy has plunged into disaster, pushed by flawed policies and Western sanctions. Daniel Kadoyo Matimba lives in Mabuku, close to the Zimbabwean capital Harare. He earns a staggering 600 million Zimbabwe dollars a month, but that's worth only $15 US. He and his family live in a plastic-covered shack. They have no electricity, running water or plumbing.
Now I cannot afford to buy chicken. Even a piece of a chicken I cannot buy it. It's 4:30.
Daniel remembered that when he was growing up, his father would buy a chicken on his payday. But times have changed. After Zimbabwe won independence from British colonial rule, Mugabe adopted a conciliatory attitude to the less than 1% white minority. But many war veterans asked for the commercial farms owned by whites. Zimbabwean whites own more than 70% of the agricultural land. And in 2000, the government launched its fast-track land reforms. The program took land from rich white commercial farmers for redistribution to poor and middle-income landless blacks.
The seizure of white-owned commercial farms has destroyed Zimbabwe's agricultural base and its relations with Western countries. The West imposed years of sanctions on the country, which led to a worsening economy. Now the country suffers from the world's highest inflation rates of more than 100,000%. This also triggered public dissatisfaction with the government and accelerated the political division.
This week, the Zimbabwean political stalemate topped the agenda of the AU summit. African leaders gathered to ponder a workable settlement. The AU urged the creation of a power-sharing government in Zimbabwe.
We have a resolution on Zimbabwe that was adopted by consensus and that calls for a government of national unity and that encourages SADC to continue in its mediation efforts.
But the US prefers a stick to carrots.
State and Treasury to develop sanctions.
It plans to introduce a draft resolution in the UN Security Council. The draft includes an arms embargo, a travel ban, and a freeze on assets.
The sanctions will further jeopardize Zimbabwe's weak economy. In the last 5 to 6 years, the country has suffered from many natural disasters. People are short of food. Sanctions will only make their lives more miserable.
China says it's up to Zimbabweans to deal with the difficulties.
We hope the parties in Zimbabwe will put the onus on the rights of their people and keep a cool head and adhere to the use of peaceful measures such as talks and negotiations to solve the dispute between the different groups in Zimbabwe. We believe that the problems in Zimbabwe should be settled by the people there at their own will.
I said
Mugabe agreed on his own terms.
that we remain open to discussion. We will remain open to discussion. If there are any proposals that the other parties would want to make to us, in good spirit.
The negotiations may be long and difficult. But for the people of Zimbabwe, the dialogue among all the political players can't start soon enough.
Well, lots of uncertainties, but one thing is clear. Zimbabwe urgently needs a viable solution for the profound problems it faces. China believes that the international community should encourage talks to help push forward the peaceful settlement and play a constructive role. Up next, Microsoft Chairman Bill Gates steps down for a new start.